Now I'll talk about tides. You know, here in Rockaway Beach, usually when it's really small, you can really only surf at low tide, because if the waves are like 0.8 feet at 6 seconds, like very minimal swell, it's only going to break when it's low tide, when it's really shallow. People say, oh, why do they say it's bad at high tide? If it's really small and the water is really deep, like 6 foot deep, the waves never really crash, because the waves' energy isn't hitting the sea floor, which is what causes it to crash. So those waves are going to roll, and they're just going to break right on the shore break, right on the sand, and there's no time for you to really ride it. So if it's a really, really small day, you could still surf here, but it needs to be low tide. Here the tides change about 30 feet, you know. Right now it's dead low tide. The waves, the water will come up like 30, maybe even 40 feet higher up the beach when it's full high tide. Other places in the world, it changes more drastically. Like in Europe, they have like 100-foot tides. People park their cars on the sand at low tide in Ireland. And if they're not paying attention, it's swept away. There's a tow truck that charges €1,000 to tow people out, and this happens all the time. It's really extreme tides. Here, you know, it's not that extreme, but it changes enough that, you know, at high tide there might be no waves if it's a really small day. But typically, like, you surf high or low tide when the waves are, you know, 3 feet plus. You know, it'll still break at high tide, and it'll be a little mushier because it's deeper. Low tide might be a little heavier because the water gets so shallow. It'll be like kind of a dumpier, more powerful wave. But typically, you know, rule of thumb is better at mid-tide, outcoming or incoming. Most places in the world is better at incoming tide. Yeah, but that's just a little bit of the tide, you know. High tide, when it's really, really small, it can be like flat. There's like no waves at all. And high tide might be like a little more intimidating for beginners because there's more shore break. That's when they like break right on the sand. So a general rule of thumb, I'd say, at least here for Rockaway Beach, like low tide is a little more beginner friendly because it's shallower. You could just kind of walk out there, you know, holding your board. You don't have to paddle the whole way, so save a little energy. So yeah, that's kind of a little breakdown of how to read the surf forecast. You could check out Surf Captain. I'll leave the link in the description below. It's just an app I like to use, and I tell my surf students here at Surf's Up, you know, this is a good app where you can check the waves. So it's easy because blue or green means good wind, and just look for like waves 1 to 3 feet and avoid, again, like a 6 foot day. You don't want to have a traumatic experience. You know, your leash could break and you have to swim in, or if you rented a board, you know, that board could snap in half if it's like a 6 foot day, and then most surf shops will make you, you know, pay for it, break it, you buy it type of thing. So yeah, stick to the beginner days for the first few months, and then maybe if you've been surfing for like, you know, 2 months, you know, say like 20 sessions or so, then maybe you're ready for like a 4 foot day just to try it out. And always go with a buddy when it's a bigger day. One last thing I'll talk about is a sideshore wind. So when the wind is blowing sideways, you know, here, wind from the east blowing east to west, it causes a little rip current, because if the wind is sideways, the water is moving sideways. And the currents here are stronger when it's dead low tide. So there's a sideshore wind and there's low tide, expect to be drifted down the beach. And here where there's jetties, you got to pay attention when the rocks are. Same thing as if there's a strong west wind blowing in this direction. You can get swept if it's strong enough. And just be aware of those things, and always surf with a buddy when you're learning, or a coach. You know, if you're a total newbie, it's good to have a surf instructor kind of guide you the first few sessions. So yeah, I hope that helps you guys out, and if you have any more questions, leave a comment below, and see you out in the water. Woo!